Have you ever stopped to think about your university login? You type in your password, one click, and you're in. Seems pretty simple, right? Well, that single simple login is actually just the very tip of a massive, and I mean massive, digital iceberg. Okay, let's dive into this because what's happening just beneath the surface is way more fascinating than you'd think.
So get this. A typical mid-sized university, we're talking maybe 30,000 students, 5,000 staff, is actively juggling over 200,000 digital accounts at any given moment. Yeah, you heard that right. 200,000. It's an absolutely mind-boggling scale that most of us just never even consider.
Because you see, it's so much more than just getting you into the library database or your email. We're really talking about a whole hidden digital city. It's got its own infrastructure for everything: finance, research, marketing, student housing, you name it. Every single department has its own set of tools, its own portals, and its own unique needs. So that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth does an institution manage this sheer volume and all this complexity without the whole thing just descending into total, absolute digital chaos? Well, believe it or not, there is a system. And it all starts with understanding what all those different accounts actually are. So let's start peeling back some of those layers. To really get how they manage the chaos, we first need to break down that huge number into a few more manageable chunks. Because as it turns out, not all accounts are created equal. Not by a long shot.
When you boil it all down, almost every single one of those 200,000 plus accounts falls into one of three main buckets. You've got identity accounts, which are tied directly to a person, service accounts, which are tied to a department's tools, and then shared accounts, which are based on a specific job or function. First up, identity accounts. Now, this is the one you're probably most familiar with. It's you. It's your digital self at the university. Whether you're a student trying to access class materials, a professor submitting grades, a staff member in HR, or even an alum who just wants to get the university newsletter. One person, many possible roles.
Next up, we've got service accounts. These aren't tied to a specific person. Instead, they're linked to a department and the tools it needs to get its job done. So think about the marketing team's main Twitter account, or the finance department's login for its procurement software, or a research lab's access to a federal grants database. These are literally the tools for the job.
And finally, we have shared accounts. Now, these are they're the necessary evils, the risky shortcuts. This might be a single login for a piece of lab equipment that everybody in the chemistry department uses, or the credentials for some ancient legacy system that just can't handle individual users. And as you can probably guess, sharing passwords like that, it can get pretty messy pretty fast. So, okay, we've got students, faculty, departments, and shared tools, all needing different kinds of access. That's the chaos. So now let's get to the good part, the solution. The really elegant system that brings order to all of this and basically acts as the university's one master key. The first and maybe most important piece of the puzzle is single sign-on. You probably know it as SSO. This is the magic that lets you use just one username and password to get into pretty much everything. The best way to think of it is like a digital passport. You show it once at the main gate, and then you're free to access every building you're actually authorized to enter. And it's honestly no exaggeration to say that SSO is the absolute linchpin of university account management. Without it, the whole system, the entire user experience would just crumble. I mean, can you even imagine needing a different password for your email, for the learning system, for the library, and for class registration? It would be a complete and total nightmare. But, okay, think about it. If SSO is the master key that gets you in the front door, there has to be another system that decides which rooms inside that key can actually open. That system is called Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC. This is the crucial part. Just because you have the key doesn't mean you can go everywhere. Your role is what determines your access. And here you can see exactly how this works in practice. For instance, a student needs to be able to submit their assignments in the learning management system, the LMS. But a faculty member needs to be able to grade those assignments in that exact same system. RBAC is the brain that knows who's who and grants them different permissions based on their role. It's what keeps all that data secure and makes the system actually functional. All right, so SSO and RBAC handle most of the core systems really well. But what about the wildcards? Let's talk about social media for a second, because it can be one of the single biggest headaches for universities' IT and communications teams. Just look at the scale we're talking about here. It's not just one Twitter and one Instagram account. A big university can easily have over 100 official social media accounts spread all the way across different colleges, departments, sports teams, you name it.
And trying to manage who has access to all of those is a huge, huge challenge.
And this brings up a very real, very practical problem. What happens when that brilliant student intern who's been running the chemistry department's Instagram for the last year finally graduates? How do you securely pass the torch without just, texting them the password? The old way, just sharing passwords, is, let's be honest, a security nightmare. If that intern leaves on bad terms, you are scrambling to change everything. But the new, modern way to do it is with session-based access. The university grants the intern a temporary revocable session. When they graduate, an admin just clicks a button and poof, their access is gone. No passwords are ever shared, and the handoff is totally seamless and secure.
And that whole idea of an intern graduating brings us to our final key concept here, lifecycle management. Because, you see, an account isn't just a one-time setup, it's a journey that mirrors a person's entire relationship with the school, from the day they apply to the day they become an alum.
This digital journey has 3 really critical stages. There's onboarding, where accounts are automatically created when a student enrolls. Then there are role changes for when that person's relationship with the university changes, like when a student becomes a teaching assistant. And finally, there's offboarding, which is the whole process of securely removing or changing their access when they leave.
Now that middle step, role changes, is where a really sneaky and dangerous problem can pop up. It's called permission creep. This is what happens when someone gets new permissions for their new role, but nobody ever takes away their old ones. So over time, they just accumulate all this access they don't need and shouldn't have, which becomes a major security risk. And active lifecycle management is the only real way to stop that from happening. So after all that, what are the big things to take away from this? First, universities are running a digital city of absolutely staggering complexity. Second, technologies like single sign-on and role-based access control are what create order out of that potential chaos. Third, managing an account's entire lifecycle from start to finish is absolutely critical for security. And finally, those tricky wildcards like social media really demand modern session-based solutions. And all of this leaves us with a much bigger question to kind of chew on. We've seen how an institution can create, change, and even delete a person's entire digital existence on campus with just a few clicks. So in a world that is so reliant on these digital accounts, what does it really mean for our own identity when it can be so centrally and so instantly managed? Definitely something to think about.